hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Jenny and I am a Canadian knitter, joining you today from a fairly overcast northeast of England, but we have been having some really beautifully sunny weather lately. I feel like last year, in the spring especially, I was talking a lot about how it had just been kind of relentlessly rainy here from autumn to spring, and I generally like rain, and I wasn't loving it last year. But this autumn so far we're getting much more variety. We've had some beautiful sunshine, some overcast days like today, we've had some days with really heavy rain, and I'm kind of back to loving all the weather. I generally love all the weather as long as it varies, so life is pretty good. And I am back to share my knitting with you. It has been about 3 weeks since I filmed the last regular kind of vlog style video, and I have done so much knitting since then. I've been feeling quite good, my hands have been really good, my joints in general have been fairly okay this autumn, so I've got 3 finished objects to share with you, which I'm very excited about. Lots and lots of knitting. But before I jumped into that, I did just want to, I don't know if you can tell, but I'm a bit embarrassed. I did just want to kind of thank you for your response to the video that I uploaded last week, which was the kind of knitting with Virginia Woolf video, and kind of literary knitting in general. And I have to admit that I was quite nervous about uploading that video. And, you know, my partner, who is so wonderfully supportive, he really is just like the most wonderfully supportive man of all of my hobbies and interests, and, you know, he's really lovely. But I showed him the video and he was kind of like, okay, I don't know if all knitters are gonna like this. I think it freaked him out when I brought in, you know, I brought in a citation from a critic, and he was like, oh, Jenny, I don't know. He's a big nerd also, and I think we're both aware that that is not always everyone's bag. And so I was very conscious as I was uploading it that it might not be for everybody. And I assume that it is not for everybody. I imagine that some of you will not have loved that more than anything else, and that is completely okay. And I definitely intend to keep doing videos like this one that are a bit more knitting and chat based. But I did just want to take the time to thank you so much for those of you who shared that you did really enjoy it and would like me to do more of those, because it really did give me a lot of joy, and a kind of specific joy. I haven't really done that kind of research just for fun in a long time, and I really enjoyed it. So there are definitely more of those in the works. They do take a bit of time to put together just because of the research element and, you know, planning a project to go alongside. So I won't be speedy, but I know especially that there are a few of you who are new from that video, and I'm tickled and touched that you saw that and decided to stick around. So I wanted to assure you that there will be more of that, but I'm working on it. I will get it to us as quickly as I can. So I think that that's all the housekeeping that I wanted to rattle off. And again, you know, really thank you so much, both those of you who didn't love that video, which again, like I really do more than get that. And to those of you who did, I'm really glad that I can do maybe a kind of variety of things, and that people will still stick around. So thanks again, and let's jump into some knitting. Okay. So, finished object number 1 is one that you have basically seen it in its entirety already. That is the For Bunnies blanket by Suzanne Strachan. I don't have a lot to add on this one because I talked about it quite a bit last time. And it's funny, in my little screen in the viewfinder, this really just doesn't show up very much at all. It's really hard to see if you can see the bunnies. But then in the actual footage last time, it was very clear, wasn't it? So hopefully you can see those again. There's one of the bunnies. And I don't think I'll be able to show you the whole thing because it is massive, as I discussed last time. Largely because I changed the gauge. I knit this at a worsted weight instead of a DK, as the pattern calls for. And then also I played with / made a mistake and made it bigger than the pattern called for. But I'm really happy with it. I contacted the friend for whom, or the friend who is the mother of the baby for whom this blanket is intended, and she kind of said, oh, you know, my toddler loves big blankets, I think it'll be great. So I'm feeling much better about it being large. That's all good. Washing this was a bit different for me just because it is acrylic. I mentioned last time that this is made out of Lion Brand's Pound of Love acrylic yarn in a worsted weight, and I am using the color Antique White. And obviously acrylic just blocks very differently from wool, which is what I'm most accustomed to using. So that was a little bit different, and you know, it made me aware that the garter stitch pulls a little bit differently when you can't block it out. So it does pucker a little bit when it's all laid out, and part of me wishes that I had thought to make my garter stitch looser to solve that, but also it's a baby blanket, I think it's going to be fine. That's the perfectionist in me speaking, and you know, I can't always let her control how I feel about finished objects. So in general, very happy. There was, when I was blocking it out, oh yeah, here it is, right at the beginning. Do you ever do, like, you know, just finding a mistake that doesn't matter? But right at the beginning of the blanket, like so early on, I missed, can I show you this without dropping the blanket? I shortened the garter stitch section. It just darts in quickly. I don't think my friend will even notice, to be honest, if I don't point it out to her. Which I probably will. She's a close enough friend, it doesn't matter. But I just, you know, like, there are always things. So this simple pattern, and I made a mistake about sizing, and I made a mistake about the garter stitch edge, just because I wasn't paying enough attention, because I assumed it was just super easy and it didn't need attention. But it did a little bit. So really pleased with that, really. In the end, I think that that's gonna be a perfect gift for this new baby. Oh, and one thing that I did want to say is, you know, I think like lots of people, I have my preferred cast-ons, my preferred cast-offs, and I generally prefer a sewn Italian bind-off for casting off my projects, but that wasn't going to be, you know, totally appropriate to a garter stitch edge. So I did an Icelandic bind-off for the first time on this project, after a bit of Googling that showed that that was kind of, you know, a stretchy bind-off that would look good on a garter stitch edge. And see if I can show that to you. I'm really happy with it. It was so much fun to do. It was quick, like way speedier than a sewn bind-off, which isn't that surprising, a sewn bind-off takes a bit of time. But it was speedy, it's so stretchy, so I'm really pleased with that, and I think it looks really good. So sewn Italian bind-off. And always fun to have a reason to add a new skill to the repertoire. So that is the For Bunnies blanket by Suzanne Strachan. Now, finished object number 2 is, again, I showed the yarn for this last time, and this is again a baby blanket, and again made out of acrylic. This one is, let me just double check, it's Red Heart Comfort Solids in the color Seafoam. And in general, I enjoyed working with this acrylic slightly less than I enjoyed working with the Lion Brand Pound of Love. I found this one just a little bit less soft and really round and full-bodied. It would be good for cables, but in a way that just made it feel a bit bulkier, even though they're a very similar gauge yarn. They're both worsted weight. It made it feel a bit bulkier, and I just didn't enjoy the feeling of that quite as much. But that's, you know, a negative way to start with a blanket that I'm really, really pleased with. So I ended up going with the sampler blanket, which was the F989 Encore Worsted Sampler Afghan by Plymouth Yarn Design Studio, which is a terrible, terrible name for a baby blanket, but it was so much fun as a pattern. So let me hold it up so that you can see it. Where is the start? Here we go. So it is a true sampler with all of these different sections, right down to the bottom. And oh my god, it was so much. I mean, part of the reason that I have so much knitting to show you this time is because I knit this blanket. Worsted weight, it absolutely flew by, but it flew by because it was at the big gauge, but also because I think that my brain really liked the sampler format or the sampler structure. It was so easy to be knitting in the evening and think, okay, it's time to go to bed. Oh, but I'll just make it to the end of this pattern repeat or this section, and then, I'd get to the end of that and maybe I'll just do one more, because they didn't take, they were quick enough that I could talk myself into thinking that I could do another one. So it went really, really quickly. None of the repeats were difficult, but they were all interesting, and required, just a bit of thinking, a bit of getting used to it at the beginning of each section, a little bit of counting. So that was really good. Do I have some favorites? One thing I will say is this one. So the third one down here, if you can see, and it kind of shows, but these look much more like ridges than they're meant to. Maybe I'll try to put up a comparative photo next to it so that you can see, but I think with a less round yarn, with a flatter yarn, can't remember how many plies this was, but with a 2-ply yarn instead of a 3 or 4-ply yarn, I think that pattern would have shown more clearly, because it was meant to kind of pull certain stitches in and push certain stitches out. And this yarn was so not doing that, especially as I was knitting it. While the needles were still in this part of the project, the needles helped to push those stitches out even more. And so that one I did stop and restart a couple times and, really reread the pattern and see what I was missing to see if I was doing something wrong. I really don't think I was. It was a fairly simple repeat. I think it is just a case that this yarn maybe wasn't ideally suited to the way that this pattern was meant to look. But other than you guys, because I just told you, and anyone else who's ever knit this, no one will know what it should look like. And I think that what it looks like in the end is just fine. I'm quite happy with that, actually. I think it's a cute texture. I think that'll be fine. And I think that actually, one of the things I like about this blanket, this is not a direct segue from what I was just saying, I'm realizing, but just talking of texture, I think that the texture is really interesting and will hopefully be good, good textural stimulation for growing baby brain. So that was quite fun. I really enjoyed the diagonal one to knit. It was just quite rhythmic, and fun to see those diagonal lines coming out. I also quite enjoyed, this is one of the more subtle ones, but I think it was called Tiny Bows or Little Bows. And you can kind of see them there. That was really fun as well, and that was a slip stitch pattern. So this was a free pattern from Plymouth Yarn Design Studio, and I would really recommend it. I think that this is definitely going on my short list of blankets to knit for future babies in my life, because it was genuinely a really fun knit. And having already blocked the For Bunnies blanket, I was conscious that the garter stitch wasn't going to adjust as much as if I was knitting with a wool that would have memory, and so I think generally we're advised, aren't we, to not try to loosen up or tighten up our knitting, to change needles instead, because it's just hard to be consistent with that, isn't it? But I tried a little bit to be just a little bit more loose, a little bit looser, a little bit more conscious of being loose when I was doing the garter stitch. And I think that actually did make a difference. It could also be this blanket lies a bit better, lies a bit more flat, partially just because it's not straight stockinette through the blanket. There is texture that scrunches that up a little bit in the same way that garter stitch, scrunches things up. So very happy with this, happy with how it lies. I did an Icelandic bind off on this one as well. I'm a convert. I'm really a convert. Which edge is the bind off? Here we go. Just so you can see another example. So that, I think, anytime I'm doing anything that's garter stitch, I'm definitely going to do an Icelandic bind off from now on. I really enjoyed that one. One final thing to say about this, which is maybe, you know, this might have been a marketing thing. I am aware, but if it was a marketing thing, it really worked on me. One thing I really liked about this pattern, which is free, is that they had the name of each woman who designed or wrote out each section of the blanket. So it seems to me like in the design studio at this yarn company, they had, you know, a different woman from the company write out each section, come up with what the pattern repeat would be for each section, and you got the name of each woman as you went through, and it just, it did, you know, it did what I imagined they hoped it would do, which is that it made it feel really collaborative and, well, just more connected to real people. Because, you know, I mean, I keep having to look over at my notes, you may have noticed, to remind myself of what the design studio is called. I think design studio is just, it is quite a bit more impersonal than, you know, For Bunnies from Suzanne Strachan, who has a Ravelry page and an Instagram, and you can look her up and, you know, get a sense of who you're getting your pattern from. Whereas, you know, a design studio is usually a bit more impersonal. So I really appreciated the touch of kind of putting a name to not just the pattern but to the different sections, and it also kind of made me think that that would be quite a fun thing to, you know, if you had a lot of knitting friends at some point, to come up with a pattern, to a kind of, you know, sampler pattern together where you each, you know, dig through some stitch dictionaries and come up with a pattern repeat that you like, and you all make a blanket pattern together, you know, like it's, I think that's just a lovely idea. So full endorsement from me for this blanket. I don't know if anyone has any baby blankets that they need to knit. There are also instructions to make this a full-size blanket, and I don't see myself knitting a full-sized blanket for adults in the near future. There are just lots of things I want to knit a bit more pressingly than that. But if I was going to knit a blanket, this would be a, you know, I think the danger with knitting a full-size blanket for me would be losing interest or getting tired of the pattern partway through, and I think that this one really would prevent that from happening. So, and you know, since it's a free pattern, you could kind of look at it and see how it's constructed and swap out stitch patterns with ones that you like, or, you know, you could really personalize it as well. So, very happy with that sampler blanket. Okay, so my third and final finished object for you this week is much smaller. So maybe it isn't actually that much knitting that I've done, but it felt like a lot. Finishing objects certainly makes it feel like things are going quickly, doesn't it? But my third object is a hat in quite a dark blue with our overcast light, maybe not the easiest to see, but really it's kind of a lovely bright blue in the sunshine, and looks a bit darker without it. And you may have noticed from some of the unevenness of the yarn that it's made out of my Handspun. So this is an early Christmas present for my father, or not an early Christmas present. It is a Christmas present that I am knitting early, that I feel like I'm more on my game. You know, I'm more on schedule than I have been in previous years. I'm planning quite a bit of holiday knitting this year. My family celebrates Christmas, and I'm really looking forward to being able to gift them some hats now that I'm kind of knitting again. I have knit everyone in my family hats before, and my parents are really the kind of people who are like, you know, I only need 2 or 3 hats in my life and then I'm good, that's enough hats. And have kind of, you know, had kind of asked me to put on the brakes in previous years, and, you know, that they didn't need more knitting. But I've been getting back into it and really excited, and I've been requested to make more again. So that was really, really lovely. My family, they're all quite knitworthy. They wear those hats a lot. And in fact, part of what prompted them asking me to make some more hats again is that my mum was, well, both my parents were out walking the dog last year in some woods not far from where they live, and my mum lost a hat. She got warm and she took off her hat and she thought she stuck it in her pocket, but it must have fallen out. and she lost a hat that I must have, it was crocheted, not knit, and I must have crocheted that for her when I was in high school, so 15 years ago, probably, and she was really disappointed and asked me if I could make her another one, and you know, no problem. I said, of course I would make her another hat. But it was one of those, the world is such a small place kind of stories, because she was really disappointed, and it was a kind of rainbow colored yarn, a wool that I don't think I would, like, I think it's discontinued. I wouldn't have been able to source it again. I wasn't using Ravelry consistently at that time. I have, you know, I've really only become consistent at using Ravelry in the last year. I would kind of put some projects on, but others not, and that one I didn't. So I don't know what the yarn was. You know, I don't remember any of the dimensions or anything like that. And she was quite disappointed, and, you know, asked other people that she knew who walk in those same woods with their dogs if they would keep an eye out for the hat, because they went back and they retraced their steps, but it was snowing while they were there, so the hat must have been covered already. They just couldn't find it. She was really upset about it. And a friend of hers who is just, you know, one of those people who just knows everybody, like really gregarious, really extroverted, and she's kind of said, you know, do you mind if I put it on Facebook, on some of the groups that I'm in? I'm in some dog walking groups. Do you mind if I put a picture? We had a picture of Mum in the hat. And the hat was found like 4 months later. When snow started to melt, someone found it and had seen my mom's friend's Facebook post, and the hat got back to her. So, I mean, yeah. I don't know why I'm telling you that story, other than that I think that that's so lovely, right? And you can't ask for better from, you can't ask for people to love an object that you've knit more than that, knit or crocheted more than that. So this is the first of several Christmas presents that I'm making for family this holiday season. I'm really pleased that they're kind of letting me do it for them again. And I'm really excited about doing this with my Handspun for Dad. So this is made, the wool comes from Bergschaft sheep, and it was carded, dyed Bergschaft from Adelaide Walker, which is a family-owned, family-run business in Yorkshire, I believe. They're definitely in the north of England, not, you know, not wildly far from where I am. And I've bought some spindles from them and some combed top, but this was the first carded top that I had ever spun with. And I got it in 3 colors, so let me show you. Where did the third color go? There we go. So I got it in, this was just called blue, this color, and I also got it in lime green, which I love, and this was mottled green. And I really enjoyed, I got 50 grams of the lime green first, and I loved it. You know, that really showed me that I enjoy spinning from combed top. I like a woolen prep. I still only do inchworm worsted spinning with my spindles. I haven't tried, or I haven't successfully tried woolen spinning with my spindles yet, but I really enjoyed that woolen prep. That was really fun to spin with. And then I tried the mottled green, and I hated it. It was, and you can probably tell from just the difference in the skeins. The green is, you know, not even. It is definitely hand spun. It's definitely beginner hand spun. You know, I'm still a baby spinner. But this, I don't know if you can see, is just much more slubby, and I found it really difficult to draft. It was a bit felted in places, I think, like it just wasn't very joyful. And I went back and looked on the website, and it definitely said on the website that this was appropriate for spinning, for felting and spinning. But then I saw somewhere else where they had commented online, because I was just searching around a little bit, that they, you know, it would only be brave spinners who should use this for spinning, that it's really more appropriate for felting. So that made me feel a little bit more justified. You know, just one of those inexperienced things that I didn't know what I was looking for. I didn't know how to read, you know, like you can spin with it, but that's maybe not what they advise. So that made me feel a little bit better about this one, because I battled with this one. I mean, I love the color. I'm so happy to have the yarn. You know, I did persevere, but that wasn't fun to spin. Whereas these ones actually were, so, you know, I don't know what that says, you know. Maybe I'm not overly picky as a spinner, or, you know, maybe when I'm more experienced in a few years, I'll think, oh my gosh, why did I battle through with that? That wasn't so much fun, or that wasn't easy. But it was really interesting to play with a new prep. So anyways, I'm telling you all of that just in case there are any spinners out there who are interested in those kinds of things. Does anyone else get caught up with those kinds of things? Do you like woolen preps generally? Anyways, I think I'm gonna try. I have quite a bit of comb top. I'm a much faster buyer of fiber than I am spinner. Whereas my knitting buying habit and my knitting habit tend to keep pace with each other. I got very excited last year and bought more comb top than I can reasonably spin in the next few months. So I'm not going to buy any more carded top right away because I want to make some progress through the other combed top that I have. But that is something that I'm excited to explore more. So this hat is made with that. And it's, you know, it's slubby, it's imperfect, but I think that my dad will love it. And I think he'll, you know, like, he doesn't get the spinning at all, but he gets how excited I am about the spinning, and I think that will mean that he really likes the hat. I had been talking about, because I knit myself and Mum sweaters out of Icelandic plötulopi that she had bought while she was on a holiday, on a visit in Iceland several years ago. I, you know, didn't want my dad and brother to feel left out, so I kind of offered to make everybody Icelandic hats. And my dad said, oh, I would love that, that would be great, please make me an Icelandic hat, but can it be less warm than the previous hat you made me? I was kind of like, no. If I make you an Icelandic hat, it's gonna be really warm. I could have held it single, probably, the plötulopi held single, but I was kind of thinking, you know, like, I think the point of making a plötulopi hat would be to make it really warm and really insulated. So my idea was to make him one out of handspun because I thought that this would be a color that would really suit him, that he would like, and this will be slightly less warm than the plötulopi, so that he has a good variety of warmth of hats. I started off basing this loosely on a hat pattern that I've used before, which is the Winter Smiles hat by Drops Design. It's another free pattern. This and the sampler are free. The For Bunnies pattern is paid for, but this one is free. I realized as I was kind of preparing to talk to you about this that I changed the number of stitches that you cast on, and I changed how long I knit for before I started doing crown decreases. And because I had changed the cast on number, I changed the decrease rate at the crown of the hat. So this isn't really actually a Winter Smiles hat at all anymore. I changed all of the numbers, but that was kind of a reference. And then I've also put on my Ravelry all of the details for that. And I enjoyed knitting this so much. I'm generally not the biggest fan of a fully 1x1 ribbed hat, just because, you know, that's so much putting the yarn back and forth. But I think just balancing that out with it being hand spun and that being really still very, very exciting to me as a new spinner, this was so much fun. I enjoyed this so much, even though I was passing the yarn back and forth constantly. And so much so that I am going to knit one for me. I think that's going to be one of the next projects, is to knit myself one in the lime green. I feel like the practical color chooser in me often wins out, and I tend to pick colors that I anticipate being able to wear with a lot of things when I make stuff for myself, and that I anticipate being able to wear for a really long time, and you know, just tend to pick colors in my comfort zone, I guess is what I'm saying. And this color is not far outside my comfort zone. It's green, you know, that's very, very much what I like to knit with for myself. But I guess what I'm saying is I have been craving brightness. I have been craving knitting with something bright, and I have been craving adding something kind of bright to my wardrobe for myself. So I think this is just the ticket that's going to serve all of those purposes, tick all of those boxes. Another really fun, joyous knit with my handspun, and it'll be a bright addition for me. So This again was a really quick knit, you know, just a hat, and knit at a fair gauge. I think I used 4mm needles. It's kind of roughly a DK weight. So a fast knit, and I think that's going to be a cast on that I knit soon. I still don't know what I'm doing with this. I ended up getting, because I ordered again, I got 100 grams of the blue and the lime green because I really enjoyed spinning those. This one, since I didn't enjoy it, I stopped at 50 grams. And I don't have any plans for this yet, but I thought I would show it to you just to kind of share the variety in those experiences with those colors. So that is the end of my finished objects. Okay, and finally I have one work in progress to share with you. Which I actually am fairly far along on, and that is another pair of socks. Oh, let me just secure the needles a bit more. Should have done that first, I apologize. But this is, let me just confirm the title for you. So this is the I'm So Basic sock, the I'm So Basic pair of socks by Summer Lee. And I am knitting this again in my favorite sock yarn, also the only sock yarn I have used. I'm still such a newbie to sock yarn knitting, but this is again Kremke Soul Wool. I really like that it is non-superwash. That really appeals to me for a number of reasons, and I like that the nylon in this sock yarn is recycled. You might be able to tell that this sock is very kind of wrinkled up here, and then it evens out down here, and that is because I initially started a different sock pattern and got fairly far with it. It was a kind of cabled and lace pattern, and it was really fun to knit, but it was quite tight, so I was going to have to pull back and restart the ankle anyways, which isn't a big deal, but I wasn't actually loving the look of it as a sock so much for myself. I wasn't sure I would wear them that much, and I was beginning to be worried that the particular texture might bother me, just as a kind of sensory issue in shoes and stuff like that. And holes in socks, I'm so cold, I don't know. Anyways, I was starting to find reasons to not be in love with that pattern anymore. So I decided instead to knit a basic sock. This will be my first pair of vanilla socks, and I think will be good for helping me to establish kind of how many stitches I like in a basic sock. I've done the ribbed socks by Kate Atherley, which I am actually wearing today. Will it be too weird if I show you my foot? So I'm wearing the ribbed socks by Kate Atherley. I love them. And of course the Virginia Wool socks were a cabled pattern, so I have a sense of kind of how many stitches I like for a cabled pattern. So I think that this will be good for helping kind of round out a base, you know, understanding of how many stitches I like in different kinds of pattern socks. I don't have the ball band with me, I'm sorry, but I am knitting this in light turquoise and navy blue. I still maintain that navy blue, which the Kate Atherley socks are knit in as well, is really more of a deep purple than a navy blue, but I still really like it, and I think the colors are, for non-superwash yarn, the colors are really vivid and consistent and beautiful. So I'm quite happy with that. You may have noticed I've got stitch markers running across all of the decreases from the gusset, and I did that with the first pair of socks, and I think I'm going to keep doing it. What I did basically was, once I was established with the decreases, I just did a bit of math to know how many decrease rounds I would have to do to get to the end number of stitches that I needed, where then I would just be, you know, then I stopped decreasing and just knit around. And I sectioned out that many stitch markers and divided that by 2, because there's obviously 2 decreases per round. But basically calculated how many decrease rounds I would need to do, portioned out that many stitch markers, and then just added a stitch marker every time I did a decrease round. And the reason that I did that was this sock has been so appropriate for TV knitting, on-the-go knitting, public transit knitting, and having the stitch markers keeps me from having to think. It both makes it easier for me to, at a glance, know whether I'm on a decrease round or not, though, you know, you can also just read your knitting to do that. But having the stitch markers count out the number of rows meant that then I didn't have to be counting the total number of stitches very often to see where I was and how many more decrease rounds I needed to do. It's not a big hack. I don't think it saved me a ton of time and effort, but it saved enough time and effort that I did enjoy it. And I think I'm going to keep doing that. I will leave these stitch markers on until I do the second sock and then just transfer them over, I think is how I'm going to do that. And just to say, I guess, that as I got to the end, as I had, you know, 2 stitch markers left, I did count again, just to make sure that I was on track, that my math had made sense, and that it was going to line up the way that I wanted. And it did. So I'm in the home. I mean, there's still quite a bit of knitting to do, quite a bit of, I have long feet, I have big feet, so there's still quite a bit of stockinette to do before I get to the toe. But having done the, you know, the gusset is kind of the fun, interesting / slightly challenging bit, so it really feels like I'm in the home stretch with this first sock now. So that is my one and only work in progress. I don't have much on my needles at the minute, but I am hopefully going to be casting on that hat soon, and I have lots of plans for what I will be knitting next, so definitely more whips to come. Oh, this is jumping back to the hat actually a little bit, but one thing I should say is I haven't blocked this yet. You may or may not have noticed, if you're a returning viewer, if you've been with me for a while, that the background of some of these videos has changed, alongside quite a bit of bouncing around for weddings and work and visits this summer. My partner and I also moved. We haven't moved far. We're still in the northeast of England. We're you know, in a different neighborhood. We're not exactly where we were before, but we haven't left the region, the area, because we really like it here. We really do, you know, we see ourselves settling here. But in that way that certain things always disappear in a move, I can't find my wool wash. As far as, like, you know, things that go missing in a move go, wool wash is pretty low stakes, and I, you know, knock on wood, it's the only thing that I really can't find right now, but it's been driving me a bit crazy, and I really can't find the wool wash. So I have bought some more. It's never a terrible thing to have more wool, you know, 2 bottles of wool wash. And I suspect that as soon as the new wool wash arrives, I will find the old one. But I do wanna block this hat before I cast on the new hat, just to, you know, really see how the dimensions turn out. I wanted this to be quite big for my dad, but I might, you know, want it to be a little bit smaller for myself. So I want to block it before I cast on, and so I have ordered more wool wash that is coming. But I also wanted to mention that we've moved just because I am bouncing around in different rooms a little bit. I'm getting used to where the light is best. So I don't know if I will always be here. I'm still kind of figuring it out, but hopefully you can bear with me as I get used to what time of day and what light works in which rooms and that kind of thing. I do have a kind of designated craft space, designated craft room for the first time, which feels really, I feel spoiled rotten. I feel really, you know, my partner and I have done a lot of living in small 1-bedroom apartments, and we have quite a bit more space now and are feeling really, really fortunate and spoiled with that. But the craft room doesn't get great light, so that was the plan initially, but we'll see. So anyways, there will be a bit more bouncing around probably in future videos, but I am hoping to keep to a fairly regular upload schedule over the next little while if I can, and I'm really looking forward to coming back and showing you my knits again next time. So thank you so much, as always, for joining me. It's been a real pleasure chatting through my knits with you, and I will see you soon.